মাতো কৃষ্ণ পিত কৃষ্ণ দান প্রাণ, কৃষ্ণ মাতো কৃষ্ণ পিত কৃষ্ণ দান প্রাণ।
Hare Krishna, Shri ADVAITA-KRISHNA Prabhu. Well, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. Our glories to Jagat Krishna Prabhupada, our glories to assembled Vaishnava devotees, and our glories to our revered speaker for today, His Grace ADVAITA-KRISHNA Prabhu. We thank you all for being here, and more particularly our speaker, His Grace ADVAITA-KRISHNA Prabhu. Thank you so much for
Hare Krishna,
being
everyone.
here with us today. We've missed you for quite some time.
I missed you all. I missed you all too.
It's so nice to have you again. So
Hare Krishna.
we've already spent 7 minutes into our limited time. I know it's late, your time. So
It's 7 o'clock here. It's okay for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. So we may put the verse on the screen and then you take it over from here. I see Salika is smiling. He's happy seeing you. Hare Krishna.
So I can do Mangalacharan prayers meanwhile?
Yes.
Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaiham Dadati Sabatantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shiyuta Padakamalam Sri Gurum Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sivishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantha Radha Kantha Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So we'd like to thank all the devotees for giving me the opportunity, and I apologize for having been a little bit away because of my engagements been a little bit strange. We're always happy to be with the devotees here. So today we are studying Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, the status quo, the Lord's pastimes out of Vrindavan, which is chapter 3. Text today is text 18. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswating Vyasam Tato Jayamudhire. Nasta Prayeshu Vabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Utamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Ajayaya Dharma Sutam Aswamedhai Stribhir Vibhu Sopikshamang Anujay Raksham Reme Krishnam Anuvrataha. Word meaning: Ajayaya, made to perform. Dharma Sutam, by the son of Dharma, Maharaj Yudhishthir. Aswamedhai, by horse sacrifices. Tribhihi, 3. Vibhu, the Supreme Lord, Saha Maharaja, Yudhishthir, Api also, Shamam, the earth, Anujayi, assisted by his younger brothers, Rukshan, protecting, Reme, enjoyed, Krishnam, Krishna, the personality of Godhead, Anubrataha, constant follower. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajakacarya, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Lord induced the son of Dharma to perform free horse sacrifices. And Maharaj Yudhishthir, constantly following Krishna, the personality of Godhead, protected and enjoyed the earth assisted by his younger brothers. Maharaj Yudhishthir, purport. Maharaj Yudhishthir was the ideal monarchical representative on the earth because he was a constant follower of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. As stated in the Vedas, Ishopanishad, the Lord is the proprietor of the entire manifested cosmic creation, which presents a chance for the conditioned souls to revive their eternal relationship with the Lord and thus go back to Godhead, back home. The whole system of the material world is arranged with that program and plan. Anyone who violates the plan is punished by the law of nature, which is acting by the direction of the Supreme Lord. Maharaj Yudhishthir was installed on the throne of the earth as a representative of the Lord. The king is always expected to be the representative of the Lord. Perfect monarchy necessitates representation of the supreme will of the Lord. And Maharaj Yudhishthir was the ideal monarch on this supreme principle. Both the king and the subjects are happy in the discharge of worldly duties, and thus protection of the citizens and enjoyment of natural life with full cooperation of material nature, followed in the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthir and his worthy descendants like Maharaj Parikshit. Hare Krishna. So I read the text again. The Supreme Lord induced the son of Dharma to perform free horse sacrifice. And Maharaj Yudhishthir, constantly following Krishna, the personality of Godhead, protected and enjoyed the earth assisted by his younger brothers. Hare Krishna. So thank you. You can remove the purport now. So Hare Krishna. So this is third canto, chapter 3. And in this chapter, actually, a lot of discussions is happening between Vidura and Maitreya, and also between Vidura and Uddhava. And it's very interesting how they're talking about Krishna's pastimes out of Vrindavan. This is actually being done by Uddhava, asking questions to Vidura, or having a discussion with Vidura after Lord Krishna has departed from these earthly manifestations and gone back, or rather, unfolded his or folded away his pastimes. So this section here is explaining that Lord Sri Krishna induced Maharaj Yudhishthir to perform 3 horse sacrifices. The horse sacrifices they're talking about here is called Ashwamedha Yajna. And the Ashwamedha Yajna are generally done by a monarch, by a king, who wants to have his influence is spread over a large region which he controls. The reason for this is first, it is in the nature of kings to rule by influence. They generally, the Swabhava of a Kshatriya is that they are bright, they're effulgent, they have charisma, and then they also have power and influence. So power and influence is an important aspect for management by the kingly order, because it is with this power and influence that actually they're able to make effective management systems run in the material world. So the king is the executive head of a society, and society is so organized according to rules laid out in the Dharma Shastra based on Varnashram system. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that he created many paths, and he explains one of the paths. And one of the paths is, he says, Chaturvanyam Masishtam Guna Karma Vivagasaki. I created the four divisions in human society, and they include the four varnas and the four ashramas. The four varnas is for engaging people appropriately, and the four ashramas is for creating social unit based on the family, where there are brahmacharis and then there are grihasthas and vanaprasthas and sannyas. So this system, system is created by Lord Krishna, so society has some kind of a guideline. And Krishna creates it in a very organic way, in a very natural way. This is not an imposed system. This system is based on the very nature of living beings, on the very nature of individuals in society. So when Krishna, he creates these four divisions of occupation, and he creates these four divisions of ashram organization, which means in a place where people live is called an ashram. A brahmachari ashram basically means that you're a celibate student under the order of your spiritual master. Grihastha ashram, the word ashrama, means that a husband and wife living peacefully together, under the roof. And it is an ashrama because it is sheltering them from extraneous sinful activities and extraneous activities or activities unnatural to the proper practice of devotional service. And similarly, the Vanaprastha ashram is an ashram. Ashram means where you get ashraya, where you get shelter. So in the Vanaprastha ashram, the devotees who practice Vanacharya, they get this protection by following rules and regulations of tyaga, of practicing detachment. And sannyas also is an ashram where the sannyasi is meant to actually preach, teach, and roam the earth and not be bothered about his own maintenance. And practically, that is his order. But on the occupational side, you have the brahmanas, you have the kshatriyas, and you have the vaishyas, and you have the shudras. But the executive head, the kshatriya order, they work in close collaboration with the brahminical order. Because the brahminical order, they make sure that everything is very nicely explained. Everything is very nicely instructed according to rules and regulations set up by who we call generally the Manus. The Manus, when they come, the Manus act as prime minister. The Manus, they act as a prime minister, and they come to rule a certain section of the kalpas in one of Brahma's days. And there's 14 manvantara in one day of Brahma, and one manvantara in one manvantara, there is 71 Divya Yugas, that is 71 cycle of Yugas. So when a Manvantara comes, the Manvantara is actually a person who has legislative power. Swayambhuva Manu or Vaivashvata Manu, they come and they write codes. They write codes for humanity. So they come with their own set of demigods. They come with sons. They come with their rishis, and they also come with the different categories of demigods. So it's like a whole cabinet of management. So when the Manvantara he comes, then he lays out the rule, and therefore the Manvantara, for example, Swayambhuva Manu, Vaivasvata Manu, Chakshusha Manu, they come with their whole set of, and then they go on for 71 Manvantara. And then like that, because there's 1,000 Divya Yugas, 1,000 Kalpas, 1,000 cycle of 4 Yugas, which is one cycle of 4 Yugas called Divya Yuga. So there is 1,000 Divya Yugas. So then the 1000 Divya Yuga is divided into 71 and something, and therefore you get 14. So in one day of Brahma, there's 14 manifestations of Manus. So in one lifetime of Brahma, there's 504,000 Manus. So it's like in one day of Brahma, you have 504,000 roughly ministerial cabinets with a prime minister called Manu, and they manage the universal affairs. Right. But then what is the importance of having a king? Because he generally delegates. He generally writes all the codes and all the rules of conduct of each varna and ashrama. And therefore, what is a Kshatriya dharma? What is his duty towards women? He has to know. What is his duty towards giving charity? And dana dharma, he has to know. What is a charity in terms of danda, punishment? He has to know. So, but all these codes are written by the Manus. So, therefore, for the executive management of the society, the kings, they follow the rules of Manu, which is called the codes of conduct for humanity, which is written in times and place and circumstances according to the Manus. And they are guided by the rishis, the Sapta rishis, because they are the brain behind it. And they always have some brahmanas who are the sort of advisory. So they have to influence society in a way, and they organize society in a way that the rules of varnashram are followed very nicely. And when the rules of varnashrams followed very nicely, the tendency of people is to generally act for themselves. That is normal, because if you're influenced by the modes of material nature, you're influenced by sattva-gun and rajogun, you will act for yourself mostly. But generally, there are rules based on spiritual principles, based on Shastra. And the one rule that Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Yat karosi, yat jat nasi, yat juhosi dadati, yat tapashasi tu konteya tat kuru shamadarpanam. This rule is generally followed based on principles of karma yoga. So whatever we do as an offering to the Supreme Lord. This is a general rule of Varnashram also. So the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, the Shudras, they're always induced by the executive head. He's making sure that everyone is doing their duty and making an offering to the Supreme Lord by performing their actions, yat karosi, whatever you're doing. And now it may be that people have tendencies not to always accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's always there. According to the influence of the modes of nature, those who are in the lower modes of nature, maybe they are worshipping lower grade devatas, or they're worshipping other forms of influential groups of individuals, or sometimes ghosts, sometimes hobgoblins, sometimes this and that, and sometimes demigods, and sometimes Lord Vishnu. So in society, you will have all these different varieties of people, those who practice animism, those who practice pantheism, those who practice worshipping nature, pantheism, and those who worship the different providers of material resources, the demigods, and those who worship other similar personalities. That is always there in society, and that cannot be changed. But then what happens in that case is all these individuals, they are encouraged to engage in activities for the satisfaction of a higher person, of a higher personality. And generally, if they are properly educated, the Brahmanas will teach them to practice for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Because Varnashamacharya Vishnu Maradhyate. Varnashama is organized for the worship of Lord Vishnu. Swanustita pumsam vishakshena kathasuya. If in whatever situation of life you may be in humanity, in humankind, and if activities we are doing do not bring an attachment to the lotus feet of Krishna, then it is a simply waste of time. So at the higher end of this achievement from the executive head, he is encouraging everyone to worship Lord Vishnu, but there is no force in Sanatana Dharma. So everyone can do whatever their gunas dictate. But the responsibility of the king is to make sure that they're following something, that some authority is respected. And that authority, so it's like, for example, if a king, he walks into a forest and there's some Adivasis or some Aboriginal people, and they're used to a certain kind of worship, he's not going to actually change them. He's not going to force them to say, okay, you construct a marble temple of Radha and Krishna and do that. He's not going to do that. But according to what is allowed for them, he will encourage and protect them so that actually they're doing their kind of worship that they're doing. But ultimately, because of his power and prowess, the king can actually elevate everyone spiritually, depending on his level of spirituality. So therefore, given that context, that Lord Krishna wanted Yudhishthir Maharaj to perform free horse sacrifices. Now I will try to explain. When Yudhishthira Maharaj has to rule by his power and influence, and given his high status as a highly spiritual person, if he becomes king, he becomes Maharaj, he becomes Chakravarti, he becomes Samrat, his influence will spread to the other regional rulers and kings. Now, if you look at how Vedic system of management was organized, it's very interesting. And this style of management is still there. It has left an imprint in India. So it is basically, it is a decentralized system of management, and it goes like this. So, for example, if there's a village head, and you even have that in Africa, in the Avanti, Ashanti tribes in Ghana. I've been there and I've seen they even have village heads, and then different village heads will combine together and group together. So 10 village head, then you will have one sort of super head. And then maybe, I mean, in Vedic culture, it was like this. So one head of one village is called a sarpancha. And then if you have 10 village together, then you have 10 sarpanch, but then one person is in charge on top, and he's called a nayak. And then when you have, 100 village together, which means you have 100, you have 10 nayak, then you have 100 sarpanch, then it is called a saman, and that is called a saman. And then, therefore, when you have 100 saman, then you have 1,000 villages combined together, then you have a king. So a king is generally in charge of 1,000 villages. That's a normal king. It's called a Raja. Now, what is a Maharaja? What is the difference between Maharaja? And what is the difference between a Raja, a Maharaja, a Samrat, and a Chakravarti Samrat? So Yudhishthira Maharaj was what exactly? Was he a king? Was he a Maharaja? Was he a Samrat? Was he a Chakravarti? Lord Krishna wanted him to be Samrat, Chakravarti Samrat, which means that he would be, a king is in charge of 100 villages, 1,000 villages, Raja. And a Maharaja is in charge of 10,000 villages. And a Samrat is in charge of 100,000 villages. And a Chakravarti Samrat, like Parikshit Maharaj, Chakravarti Samrat, like Maharaj Ashok, was in charge of 600,000 villages. So that's how it was. So when Krishna is saying to Yudhishthira Maharaj, do free horse sacrifice, what was the idea behind it? You spread your influences in all the villages of all the greater India, so you can actually make sure that spiritual standards are being followed all over. Do you follow? So this is a principle of horse sacrifice, which means that now he sends his challenge horse in different areas. So he said, send in all three directions, north, east, and west, because south is almost already there because it goes on to the Hind Mahasagar, went into the ocean. So he said, send these free horse challenge horses, and if anyone accept the horse and let it pass through, that means they accept your authority. So he will be going through all the different provinces, and all the provinces will have their different kings. So Yudhishthira Maharaj becomes the Maharaja if there's 1,000. He becomes a Raja if 1,000 villagers are there. He becomes a Maharaja if 10,000 villagers are there. And he becomes a Samrat if 100,000 villages are under his rule. Now, why this? Because he's the most spiritually advanced. And this is why Krishna. So it's not so sort of haphazardly that Krishna wanted Yudhishthira Maharaj to be, the emperor of Bharatvarsha. Because by his high spiritual standard, he would influence the practice of proper religious principles throughout the Akhanda Bharata, the Bharatavarsha, the greater India. So this is a principle behind it. So there's a decentralized system of management. Why? Because Bharajut is still sitting at the seat of Hastinapur. He may not be able to know exactly what's happening in every 600,000 villages of India. Could he? But if the rulers are working under his guidance, they will make sure that the principles he enunciates, that the principles he throws down are being respected. And that was how it was managed very nicely. So if any king would not accept his authority, then Yudhishthira Maharaj has the power to go down and negotiate with him. He would do four things. Dana Bheda Danda Sama. He would actually try to negotiate with him. Or he will try to say, okay, you work under my supervision. You accept me as your emperor. You stay the king of your province, of your 1,000 villages. That's fine. If you work under my rule, if you don't, then you have to fight me. Otherwise, I'll take you over. Or I will impose someone who will cooperate with me. Or if you want to get something so that you can cooperate, then we can also do some negotiations. And if you want something from me so that you can cooperate with me, dana, then I'm also willing to give you. So there will be all these negotiations. Then there will be negotiations. There'll be trying to give something to get something. And then if there's some other influential king that is trying to usurp the power of the king who is ruling the 1,000 villages, and then Yudhishthira Maharaj will use the principle of divide and rule, which is called Veda. It's part of Vedic management. So he said, but then if he doesn't agree, then he will use Danda, which means he will conquer him if you challenge. So that way, because the king has to rule by power and influence, and also by punishment if need be. Because that's why the king always carries a scepter, which is called the rod of punishment. Because without punishment and violence, you cannot actually rule a kingdom. So when Krishna said to Yudhishthira Maharaj, you do this, please, you do this, that means that you spread your influence. Because Krishna organized the whole Mahabharata Yuddha so that Yudhishthira Maharaj could be enthroned. And this is not for just some small talk. This was a big plan. And therefore, Krishna arranged that massive Mahabharata war. And then after Yudhishthira Maharaj, we had an even king of a greater caliber. And we had Parikshit Maharaj. So this whole system of the material world, Prabhupada said, is arranged with that program and plan, which is what? For the conditioned soul to revive the eternal relationship with the Lord and thus go back home, back to Godhead. If you have a king like Yudhishthira Maharaj, with these principles guiding his life, then it will trickle down to the lower rung of society. Because Krishna says, Yadyat acharati shreshta tat tat devaita rojana. Whatever great man does, common man will follow. But if on top you have a king like Vena, like in Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, you will study King Vena, he was a rascal. He proclaimed himself the supreme personality of Godhead. And it was very, he was doing a lot of bad things. And the Brahmanas got rid of him. But Krishna has encouraged Yudhishthira Maharaj, no, spread your wings. Do free horse sacrifices, send your horse, your challenge horse all over. And please do that. Why? Why is it? Because he was constantly following Krishna. And therefore, he was protected and he enjoyed the earth, assisted by his younger brothers. So Maharaj Yudhishthira was installed on the throne of the earth as a representative of the Lord. So why wouldn't a representative of the Lord be encouraged by the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna to have influence as far and wide as possible so that people can take advantage of his guidance, of his association to become, to make the earth a better place to live for everyone. So Maharaj Yudhishthir was installed on the throne of the earth as a representative of the Lord. The king is always expected to be the representative of the Lord. So the Lord is a ruler of the whole creation, and his good devotee kings or ruler of earth planet or other planets. So this idea of the kings ruling by influence is very much part of the qualities of a Kshatriya. So he has tejas, he has brilliance, and he uses his brilliance to impose his power, but not to be a dictator, no, to be a benefactor of the people. Because the general rule is that the king will rule the kingdom and he will treat the praja, he will treat the citizens as his own children. He will be respectful to the brahmanas. He will want to do 6 things. He will protect the brahmanas, and he will make sure varnashram system is running nicely, protect the women, he's protect the children, and he will protect the elderly and the cows. 6. So this is his general principle. It's all based on protection. And the king will therefore, he will, a perfect monarchy necessitates representation of the supreme will of the Lord. So Krishna's supreme will was fully manifested when he made sure that the Mahabharata war will remove all the burdens on earth planet. That was his will. And now he's happy to see Yudhishthira Maharaj sitting on the throne, not as a small Sarpanch, Nayak, Saman, Raja, Maharaja, Samrat, but as a Chakravarti Samrat in charge of the whole 600,000 villages. So because, why villages? There was also towns. There was also towns. Even Lord Shiva, he created Varanasi, which is Kashi, and it was a city. It was considered a city. They also had city. Dwarka was also a city. So they had cities, but the cities were few and far between, because they were the seat of power. The cities were the seats of power, and the villages were there because the system of management was an agrarian system of management that was required. It was an agrarian system of management. There was no industry. There is no everyone going to work in one place. And the women did not go out to work. The other day, one nice Mataji asked me in class when we were reading about the Puranas, he said, but why are the women and the Vaishyas and the Sudras considered to be like lesser class? So because of the system that was set in place. The system was set in place, and the question was in relationship to why is the Puranas written exclusively for them? Because the system that was in place is that the woman did not go out to find a job in someone else's home. A woman in the house will not go out and work for someone else in a factory. People generally did not go to work out. They worked in the village where they were. If someone is a potter, he would do pottery. If someone is a gardener, he will be doing gardening. If someone is tending cows, he'll be tending cows, but they will be doing on their own at the homestead level. It was not like they had factories and they had industrial units of production. No, they didn't have that. So therefore, the woman would be assisting her husband in the home. And it was not required also that the woman would go, say, for example, there's a big narration, a big katha, like we see the Naimisharanya situation where so many 60,000 sages were assembled. They were assembled there, but the women weren't there because it would require a certain education to be able to understand the discourses that were being held. So therefore, the husband would go to these discourses and they would come and then share these discourses with the women and the children at home, and so on and so forth. So because of that, the system, the agrarian system, the family unit was very much the basic building block of village life. And it was like that. So therefore, also the women were not required to go out and read and study under someone else, because that was the principle of protection. So therefore, it is said they didn't have access to that kind of education. Now we may say, but it's much better now in the Western civilization. We think so, but the Western, they're exposed to all this Western level of education and on all the facilities, but then degradation has taken really a strong hold. So that was because of the way the system was. So a perfect monarchy necessitates representation of the supreme will of the Lord, right? Because therefore Lord Krishna wanted Yudhishthira to spread his wings and spread his influence and have all of the so many thousands of villagers under his care. And because, like I said again, the agrarian system of management, village life was preferred rather than other ways of living. So both the king and the subjects were happy in the discharge of worldly duties. So because material prosperity comes from good organization and good management that is under the executive head of the king. So he makes sure that everyone is doing their duties perfectly, properly, and they're happy. And why is someone happy and why is someone unhappy? When someone is doing something that is not in his nature to do, but he's forced to do. Like you see nowadays, all the young people are forced to go and work in business, I don't know, outsourcing, what do you call business, BPOs, and they're all sitting in offices. Some of them like it, some of them don't like it, but that's all that's available to them right now. They go to work more hours than laborers used to work before. Like my father was a farmer, and he used to work 5-6 hours a day, right? And I see nowadays young kids who are 20, 25, they leave home at 7 and they come back at 8. So they work about 13 hours a day. So who was working harder and who is working harder now? So this system is a system based on few people, like Prabhupada used to say, few people getting rich at the expense of everyone else's labor. Right? 1% of the super duper high class rich in America controls 90% of the finances. And in England, it is the same thing. Those people who have inherited land from the times of William the Conqueror in 1066, they still own, 90% of the land in England. And the rest of the people, which is like maybe 95% of the people, own nothing. So this is a system that is in place. And this is a very unfair system, which means that everyone is like a serf. It may look like we're polished. It may look like we have a car. It may look like we have a computer. But all our time, whether with a car or with a computer, is meant for the productivity of the landlord, for the productivity which is required by the big boss. So actually, where there is happiness in this? Everyone has to work just to get some chapatis and sabjis. And thus protection of the citizens and enjoyment of natural life will full cooperation of material nature, followed in the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthira. So which means that material prosperity was there. Because everyone is working naturally. Everyone is working according to the natural propensity. He's making sure that the farmer is doing his duty of protecting the farm and the cows. The person who is doing agricultural production, he's making sure that he's doing according to rules. He's making sure that he's facilitated. He's making sure that there are no thieves and robbers coming to steal the crops. He's making sure that there's no wild animals coming to ruin the crops. This is all the duties of protection offered by the king, right? So therefore, by the full cooperation of material nature, and this Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 3, that in the beginning, the Lord of sacrifices created sacrifices by performance of which a human being can live very happily in accordance to with the help of the demigods. So the demigods in charge of offering the facilities of life, they're working under the supervision of the Supreme Lord Sri Vishnu. And therefore, when we cooperate with them by offering them sacrifices, by making sure that our work is being done properly, and whatever we are taking from material nature, we are being thankful. Otherwise, we become thieves. Said if we take from nature, say for example, if you take 5 kilo of grains, and to produce this 5 kilo of grains, there's many departments been involved. The water department, Varun Dev, Indra with his rain, water from the lakes, or Indra giving rain Bhumi, earth giving fertility, the sun giving appropriate sunlight, Vayu, the wind giving proper carbon dioxide or oxygen, whatever is required. Then the moon giving the right juice for the vegetables according to season. Then the different seasons also being controlled by the equinoxes or controlled by the rising tide and the low tides of the sea. So all these different departments are cooperating together so that we can get 1 kilo of rice. So therefore, when you take any amount of grain for your own consumption without thanking those who are responsible for providing you, you're just a thief. And the Krishna uses this term. He said, anyone who takes the bounty of nature without doing due process of thanking as a matter of sacrifice is verily a thief. And when we eat grains that is therefore obtained simply for our own satisfaction, it is concentrated sin. Gunjate agam papa. That concentrated sin. But if we take this and we offer as an act of sacrifice to Lord Vishnu, who is in charge of all the demigods, to give all this facility, then we are actually taking the Lord's mercy. So these are the simple principles of management, where the praja, where the citizens are kept completely at best as possible, acting in a way and performing their duties, taking care of their near and dear, those who are near and dear to them, and actually making advancement in spiritual life. This is the duty of the king, to make sure that everyone is following and everyone is being taken care of. So, encouraged by Krishna, Maharaj Yudhishthir, he spread his influence by performing these free horse sacrifices. Hare Krishna. This is the subject matter of the verse. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this wonderful divine way of having government in this material world. It's a very wonderful way of governance. Dear devotees, if anyone may have questions, comments, realizations you may want to ask or share, particularly around this theme, you may indicate that by using the hand emoji. Thakur Murari Prabhu, please, you may unmute. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances of goes to Srila Prabhupada and the assembly devotees. So, as usual, I thank the presenter for the, wonderful Krishna Katha. And also to look at the difference between those activities Maharaj Yudhishthira time and ours. Now we are trying to fight for democracy and the whole lot of problems we have. As a matter of fact, I think Srila Prabhupada called the man crazy. So, could you please comment on how do we live now, how do we sort of try to balance what we know from the Vedas plus how the world is, Oh, yes.
Democracy only works at the ballot box. After that, they become dictators. Because there's no... At the ballot box, they're coming every day. They're trying to get your vote. But once they're voted in, they become dictators. They're all dictators because the nature of people is to control. It's not to share, they're to control. So how do they become? Even the parliamentary system is a parliamentary dictatorship. Why? Because the people's desires are left behind. Why? Because there's no decentralized system of management. So the Vedic system was a very decentralized system of management, even though we think, Prabhuji, that one king, no. The one king on top was because of his spiritual prowess. That's all. Because of his spiritual prowess. But actually, everyone was managing their own thing. When you see in India, let's give the example. When you see in India, there's so many states. That was always there. The provincial kingdom was always there. The Gupta dynasty, the Chola dynasty, the dynasty of Bihar, the Jai Singh, the Singh dynasty in the Mewar dynasty in Udaipur. All the dynasties has been there for millennia. These dynasties have been there, but they've been smaller, and sometimes some of them grew very big because of their spiritual prowess. So they had a better system of management because the king was chosen or was trained, even if he was not chosen, he was trained according to spiritual principles. And therefore, he was trained to look after the interest of others. Now, in modern democracy, we promise to look after the interest of others up to the time of the ballot box. And then we revert to looking after our own interest after we are elected. But this is a system of democracy. And democracy is really not the will of the people. Even it is said to be the will of the people. We see now when things are really degenerating around the world that democracy doesn't mean very much anymore. America, what does democracy mean there? What does democracy mean in Canada? What does democracy mean in UK? Everyone is up and arm against the presidents or the prime ministers in place because they are not able to give satisfaction to the people. So it's better if you had one honest ruler who was not corrupt, who had good values, and who had good spiritual principles. And if he was effective and he managed Britain for 50 years, you will see some progress. If he was honest, he was just, and he was influential, and he was spiritually minded, he was kind, he was like a father, everyone would benefit. So democracy is really demon crazy. Because people, Prabhupada said, the principles of democracy are people are voting someone who would give them the sense gratification that they want. And then those who are being elected are also wanting to have the maximum sense gratification by allowing people to vote for them. So democracy is not a perfect system because democracy does not look at the character of the individual, whereas a monarchical system looks at the character of the person. And therefore, Krishna, he encouraged Yudhishthira Maharaj to replace Duryodhana because Duryodhana's character was not very nice. And Yudhishthira was Dharmaraj. He followed every single spiritual edict. So would we have someone like Duryodhana who is elected by everyone? Or would we prefer someone like Yudhishthira who was appointed by Lord Krishna? Which would be better? Not really a choice, is there? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. I hope, Prabhu, your question has been answered satisfactorily. And if that is the case, we go to His Grace, Salika Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, ADVAITA-KRISHNA Prabhu. Thank you very much for the beautiful class. And it is interesting and heartwarming when one listens to Krishna's arrangement and the practical application of Varnashram Dham 5,000 years ago and beyond. My question is, in modern times, Kali Yuga, as we see it today, is it really possible to have application of Varnashram Dham?
The application of Varnashram Dham requires two things. It requires an influential king and requires a body of Brahmanas. We have neither. Because it is a cooperation between the Brahmana and the Kshatriya that the Varnashram system is managed. It's not just the Kshatriya. Also require the Brahmana. This system was prevalent even in other countries other than India because the king would have bishops and spiritual men would be advising them. It would be like a corpus of Brahmanas. But we don't have that system. So how do we institute when the two most important element of an ashram system is not there? How do we institute that? Who would impact it? Who would actually create a system like that? How will it be created? Unless the United Nations decide to, have a council of Brahmanas appointing presidents or kings or monarchs around the country, around the different countries. And if the United Nations were a body of Brahmins. I mean, this is my angle. I may be wrong, I may be exaggerating, but how do you implement? Now, you may implement in a small way on a village level. But then when you come down to the higher agglomeration of a few villages or a town or a city, then you will fail. So you can do a micro varnashrama system based on a farm, right? But then again, do we have the necessary manpower to doing that? So yes, there's so much discussion in our ISKCON movement to establish varnashram, but I'm at a loss how to establish it. But then it's also heartwarming to know that Srila Prabhupada, when he was talking about this, at one point he said, well, we didn't have varnashram, but it didn't stop me from spreading Krishna consciousness. Why? I'm just teaching Nectar of Devotion lately. I mean, been teaching for the last month and a half. And Prabhupada very clearly says varnashram is external to devotional service. So we are spreading devotional service. We are spreading the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and people are trying to worship the Supreme Lord while being situated wherever they are. Yare dekho tahe kaha Krishna upadesh hamara jnana guru hanatare des, which is also the recommendation of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, just spread the message of Lord Krishna. And therefore, like this, you deliver your dependents, or deliver the people who are you in contact with. Tarai Desh, which means Desh means your locality, your country, your village, or whatever it may mean at a higher and higher level. So can we really establish varnashram? Okay, on what level? Okay, definitely not on a sort of district level, because in a whole district, who will have the influence? Now, definitely not on a more maybe county level. Definitely not on a state level. So how do we establish? So we can, at most, in the small unit that we may be controlling, we may have 100-acre farm and we'll have varnashram there. But then what is the value of that varnashram? Better chant Hare Krishna, offer all the food to Krishna, and everyone dance and chant and live happily. I mean, I see it in a very practical term. Right? Because varnashram was established top down, because the rules of varnashram are written by the Manvantaras. Manvantaras, they write Manu Samhita, they write the codes, and then the rules, and the king has to learn the rules. The king they don't have legislative assemblies. They don't pass laws, bills, and acts, and then change them ever and ever again, like Parliament do. No, they are based on spiritual rules and regulations that is written by the codes of Manu, and they're handed down. And then, for example, Bhishma Dev, who was very, very knowledgeable, he was teaching on his deathbed. He was teaching in Anushasana Parva, which is called, the book of management in Mahabharata. He was teaching managerial principle to Yudhishthira Maharaj, right? So where did he learn it from? He learned it because it's there in the codes of Manu. So he was teaching it to Yudhishthira Maharaj, right? So it's not that Yudhishthira Maharaj has to say, okay, now we pass the bill, now we pass an act, now we pass. So this is proper varnashram because it is a will of the Lord that is coming down. How do we establish that at this point, Prabhuji? I'm just answering your question by asking a few more questions. So it makes us think.
Thank you. Okay, Madhavan Prabhu. Okay, yeah, I wanted to do a follow-up, but then
follow up, Salika. Follow up.
And Madhavan Prabhu is raising his hand. I think maybe he wants to say something.
Okay.
Madhavan Prabhu, yes, go ahead.
Okay. Hare Krishna Prabhu. All glory is not based on your just speak, always on Krishna Prabhupada. Thank you for coming up on board again today. We so much appreciate. And then your lecture also. It's just for my own, the way I see Prabhu, the system is natural, just as Krishna put it. Because this financial system, everybody will belong to a particular social class. Either you know it or not. Either you are working for somebody, you are a Sudra, either you're a businessman, a Vaishya, after a military man, you're a Shastra. If you are a religious person, you're a Brahmana. But I think how it's possible is that if you have a devotee at the top, maybe somehow or the other he won the election, he's going to follow the financial system, even though the designation might not be there, but he's going to rule based on that principle. And the law is written by Manu, and the whole world is following the laws, because if you look at law all over the world, it will follow some pattern. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not cheat. Those are basic things. And legislation can come up because of different circumstances that could arise, so they can try to modify the principle, but the fundamental principle is there, which is created by Manu. But my question now is, if Manu creates the law, is it for the universe or just for the Earth planet? So that's just my own take about it.
No, because the Manu rules a Manvantara, and the Manvantara means all the way from the heavenly planets down to the lower planetary systems. Yeah. The Manu's influence go all over. It is not just the Earth planet. Because Swayambhuva Manu, they are situated mostly the Earth planet, because the Earth planet is right in the middle, but they have influence all over. Yeah. And also the idea that if someone in a region, like you cannot do like that, because the principle is it has to come top down. Once Prabhupada was asked the question, what do we know what technologies to follow in any department, Prabhupada? And the devotee was trying to make some suggestions. Prabhupada said, our only technology is parampara. We take from top down. So you cannot just cut off and then have a village follow from top down, because it doesn't quite work. So yeah, it is kind of difficult. And I asked my Guru Maharaj once, I said, how is Krishna consciousness going to spread around the world? And he said very clearly to me, he said, when the king takes it up, when the presidents, the rulers take it up, because then they can make broad sweeping changes. Like, for example, they're trying to make in India, they're trying to make the cow like the national animal, considered to be saintly. Now, if they manage to pass that rule, they will stop all slaughterhouses. Now, we can preach all we want, as broad and wide as we want, which is also very nice. But if one of the rulers, one of the presidents or prime ministers decide that is a good principle, and he makes an edict, no more killing of cows, then in one sweep, you established a very wonderful principle. So how many villagers you will convince like that? So this is how it is seen. And an example is given of Maharaj Ashok. Maharaj Ashok, just before year 2000, about 2000 years, 2100 years ago, 2600 years ago, just before the Christian era, and there was a huge movement of Buddhism in India. But Buddhism spread throughout the vast tract of Pan-Asia, which means all the way from Afghanistan, so even further east, further west, and all the way to Indonesia and Jakarta, and even Japan and China. Buddhism spread all over. How did it spread? There was no email, there is no phone. How did it spread? Because of the influence of Maharaj Ashok, who was Samrat, he was Chakravarti Samrat. Maharaj Ashok ruled the whole tract of land, and his influence was there, and he became a Buddhist. When he became a Buddhist, the Buddhist principles all the way. You remember the Bamiyan Buddha in Afghanistan was broken by some group of rebels. And there is even Ramayana and in Indonesia now. And so all this was pan-India, so to speak. Because you see in Indonesia, which is far east, they follow Ramayana. Most of the different cultures of Ramayana, and the national airline is called Garuda Airlines. So how is this all influenced? So this is coming because of the spread. So when a very famous president or prime minister or some ruler become Krishna conscious, then you put them on top. Then that influence comes from top down, trickling from top down. Otherwise, we just have to preach Krishna consciousness. Like Prabhupada said, not having Varnashram did not stop him from preaching Krishna consciousness. And he was very successful at preaching Krishna consciousness. So at our level, it just creates more dichotomy, it creates more divergence, different points de vue. We just need to be united to preach Krishna consciousness at this point. Thank you, Prabhuji. Sorry.
Yes, Sadef, if you don't mind, if I can go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ADVAITA-KRISHNA Prabhu, for your answer to this question. It's a beautiful one because it borders on so many things going on in our movement. And I'm asking this question for practical application because at the end, and I like the quote you just referenced, Prabhupada saying that he did not establish Varnashram Dham, but he was able to spread Krishna consciousness because Krishna consciousness is as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave it, is the Dharma for this age. So it is in that line I want to ask a question, the follow-up question. I read recently a book written by one of our senior godbrothers, is Grace Kaunteya Prabhu, titled Neo Smarters. And it was explaining in that book, I don't know if anybody has read that book here, and was explaining even in the movement how some neo smarters are trying to dominate the movement by the philosophy of establishing the Vedic rule, Vedic regulations, do's and don'ts, and all of this in application of Krishna consciousness. And then when we talk about Varnashram Dham, as we're talking about it now, sometimes some of the rules that, as you rightly explained, given by the Manos about Varnashram Dham, becomes a little bit inapplicable when we look at the current stand of things as it is. So my point now is that, like I said, practical application. And when I look at the region where I'm coming from, and I look at how we manage our Krishna consciousness leadership structure and how instructions are passed down, what is influencing, and it is interesting how you reference Maharaja Ashok, the spread of Buddhism. And I'm looking at the development of our yatra and how things are going on. Your first answer was very critical because you were talking about the 2 ingredients required for Varnashram Dham. But we've seen that in practical application, our yatra is not as progressing as it should be based on Srila Prabhupada standards. And in my personal opinion, I'm thinking that maybe probably we've been too much into rules and regulation rather than bhakti and principles. I would like to hear your comments in regards to this.
Yes, this is a recurring question. I think that it's when the level of austerity the sacrifices we perform go down, then the resultant benefits or the resulting fruits become also lessened. So it's like maybe all of you have been in the ashram, remember then we were young brahmacharis, that so much, we were like a ball of energy and we were all working very hard for the satisfaction of Srila Prabhupada and Guru and Krishna. And there was a lot of austerity, living very simply, and so on and so forth. And therefore, we were very effective. It was the same thing in Mauritius, a small group of people. People felt that we had a lot more influence than we actually had because we were like a ball of energy, jumping, bouncing of everything that we could. And they saw that the Hare Krishnas were everywhere, and we were just 100 of us in the island. Now we have maybe 10,000 or maybe 3,000, 4,000 initiated, but doesn't like that energy level. It's the same, but it is more like a horizontal spread. It's a horizontal spread because more and more people going like this, it's a horizontal spread. But this is because I think that as the movement progresses, what is described as pure devotional service, the 2 things that stops the spread of pure devotional service, bhukti and mukti. Bhukti and mukti, which means bhukti means jnana karmadhyana avittam anukulena krishna anusilanam, right? There's two things. So bhukti means karma, we're performing activities for our own satisfaction, sometimes in the name of Krishna consciousness. So therefore, we want to enjoy the fruits of actions, whether it is related or unrelated to Krishna consciousness. Or sometimes we may be using the facilities offered by ISKCON for our own personal benefit, which is generally a characteristic of devotees who become enjoyers of the Guru's opulence, Guru Bhogi Shishya. And this is more there. In a smaller unit, it was a bit easier to kind of monitor and see. So when the yatra was less spread, less wide, less congregation, and no many different units of not many economic units everywhere, then it was hard to exploit or hard to use for our own sense gratification. But now as the movement spread and every single group of devotees become an economic unit where you can actually have money, you can have influence, you can have power, then different people are also sometimes using them for their own benefit. And sometimes this because of bhukti, therefore using fruitive activities, making sure that I'm being served, my interests are being served. And this is actually, Rupa Goswami explained that these two things stop the spread of Uttama Bhakti. And therefore it spreads the performance of the Krishna consciousness movements, bhukti and mukti. Bhukti means desire for sense gratification based on karma. And mukti means, many facets of mukti, which means that we're always speculating, philosophical speculations on what is right, what is not right, and what is good and what is not good, and trying to also philosophize on everything, and basically, rather than to serve, which is the elements of, gyan. And therefore, these two things stop the spread of Uttama Bhakti. And because of two things, and what else? Because Rupa Goswami does explain Uttama Bhakti as being Anya abhilasita sunyam jnana karmadi anavritam anukulyena krishna anusilanam bhakti rutamam. That is without these two wings, that is slowing, So what else could be slowing it down? There's only two things: impersonalism, speculation, and fruitive activities. There's only these two things, right? So what else could it be slowing down? There's only two set of brakes. Because pure devotional service will fly, but if you are not practicing on that level of cultivation, anusilanam, as we say, bhaktu anusilanam means cultivation of bhakti, then these two impediments. This was also, I'm reflecting on it deeply because today a student asked me, he said, Prabhuji, there's a question in the 4th chapter of the Nectar of Devotion. He said, what are the two things stopping, hindering the performance of Uttama Bhakti, high level of pure devotional service? And I said immediately, what is the definition of this pure devotional service? Pure devotional service is that which is completely free of bhukti and mukti. Right? Right. So what else could be otherwise? I mean, it's a philosophical answer. I'm trying my very best in my small brain. What else could it be that is stopping the spread of pure devotional service? These two things are there in Shastra. Prabhu, give me your feedback.
Thank you very much. I think Srimad Varaha Prabhu's hand is up so that I don't dominate the class.
Oh, Srimad Varaha. Haribol, Prabhuji.
I'll come back again.
Varaha, Prabhu. Dona Pranam.
I have humble obeisance, struggles to Prabhupada.
Accept mine, Jai Shri Prabhu.
I can be devoted. Well, this is a subject that I'm very passionate about, and I don't share your views on this. Before Srila Prabhupada went to the West, most of his God brothers were thinking that Westerners cannot become devotees. The reason why they did not even think of supporting him. Prabhupada went because he believed in the vision of his spiritual master, and he made it. Then Prabhupada himself had this vision that 50% of his mission is Varnashram, which is not yet completed, and he wanted his disciples to continue that. Now his disciples also can continue and be making their own, speculation about how it is possible or not. But Prabhupada had his vision. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj had his vision about preaching to the Western people. Srila Prabhupada realized it. So now it's whether the disciples of Prabhupada are empowered enough to realize his vision. So many things you have said as conditions for Varnashram to take place. I really don't see that way. One is because we have examples of self-sufficient communities. They are mixed, for instance, and there are many others who do not depend on the social system, the government, and they are functioning, and they've been there for years, for a long period of time. Prabhupada wanted something like that. Prabhupada wanted us to be, it's not like utopia. It's not utopia. To be talking and discussing Varnashram in this manner is like making it look like it's an utopian thing that cannot be realized. And I really disagree with that completely. One, a society is formed by nuclear families, right? So you have nuclear families that form the society, and different communities form a state. So Prabhupada wanted us to form, families of devotees in communities. And when you begin to have communities that are model and they are expanding and people are taking shelter of that, then the government built itself around those communities. I mean, this is how the Muslims have been developing their communities. I see it more practical, more realizable than some people think. I really believe in Prabhupada's vision. It may not happen now because those who are around are speculating, but then time will come, it will happen because Prabhupada foresaw it. Prabhupada wanted it, and it will happen. So it's not a wishful. The system is there. You have families of devotees. Prabhupada, why did he say 50% of my mission is not accomplished? Because he started Krishna consciousness mission based on ashram lifestyle. But he saw it that when ISKCON will grow, or when this community of devotees will grow, and it will go beyond just temple ashram, and it becomes communities, then there should be another system and principles to guide them and to make them function together. And we have not gone beyond the temple. Even though we have communities like Mayapur and other places, we're still functioning more like temple settings. And that is why we're having problems. Prabhupada also never intended, and if I'm wrong, you may correct me, because if he preached Varnashram, that means he never intended that communities will be run by sannyasis. The sannyasis cannot run communities because they could not be that influential leader you're talking about. The influential leader has to be somebody, that exemplifies what the communities need. The sannyasi does not. So ISKCON is being run by sannyasis mostly. Up to the recent time, they're trying to break away from that, but it's still the system. And they're not wanting to let go. So we cannot talk about communities and then be thinking that it is sannyasis, renounced order, that will make the kind of communities and Varnashram to materialize. We are on the wrong track. And we're saying that what Prabhupada said, Varnashram cannot materialize. I mean, this is just like going off this track. I believe in what Prabhupada said. Prabhupada's vision is correct. Like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, believe that Krishna consciousness can grow in the West. But most of his disciples never, especially those who are in the temples, those who are enjoying his community, his mat, those who are enjoying the facilities, they never really thought that they could go beyond that. Prabhupada was not a member of that. He was not in the temple, but he believed in the vision of his guru. And he went ahead and realized it. And then the second part, the vision that he had for the growth of this movement, his disciples now are settling down and not seeing beyond that. So I totally disagree. And I am ready. I think we've said once that we need to discuss this issue here as a real full discussion, seminar. And I will come up with facts and things to make us understand that this is realizable. And I'm not alone in this regard. I think there are many devotees who also believe this. We have just not put our things, our structures in place. You cannot think that you will run a community based on the same way temples were run. That is wrong. That will never function. That we are going into communities without putting into place things that will make communities function. There are many things that are going wrong based on the fact that we're using monastery lifestyle to run a community system. It is not right. So this is just my submission. But I'm ready.
I tend to agree on 80% of what you said, Varaprabhu. And humbly, I would say that yes, you made me think a lot more what you're saying, and I kind of agree 80% of what you said. But I'm saying we don't have a critical mass at this particular point to make a worldwide movement based on Varnashram. But yes, on a community level, I 100% agree with you. Srila Prabhupada did profess what we call a simple living, high thinking. But like I said to you, if most of our devotional principles are being sort of, I don't know how to say, being supplanted by people engaged in fruitive result and picking the benefits out of the community or the temple, then definitely that doesn't create a harmonious relationships. Well, also you have like family units, like you say, grihastha families, family units, working and providing, luxurious lifestyles for renunciates, then that is also not very good. So on the other side, then you have also what I think someone said about smarter, what do you call this? The smarter group of people who are trying to, yeah. So yeah, there's too many extremes, but at this point, I feel, yeah, if we, in certain countries, certainly maybe in Africa, where there's more of an agrarian consciousness, I think communities can be built because people are on the subsistence, many places, I'm not saying everywhere, on the subsistence level. And if you can provide, Prabhupada did try in America, but the influence of the hedonistic way of life took over the farms, and everyone was more of a consumer than producer. So therefore, it didn't take place. So now, when you look at the balance of instructions on that basis, which one you give is like which one you give more weight to? Because Srila Prabhupada did that many times also say, I'm not disagreeing with you, but which one gives more weight? Prabhupada did say many times that we can preach, and Varnashram is good because it helps everyone progress. But at the same time, when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was asked about the state of subjugation of the Indian subcontinent under the British rule, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that Krishna consciousness is so urgent that we cannot wait for any change of government. So on that level also, I mean, I'm not trying to infer that instructions to give credibility to whatever I have said that may not be in agreement with you. But at the same time, at this point in time, do we have the critical mass to make an influence? Maybe we don't. I don't know. But I do agree with your principle that if we gave more credibility to community, wholesome communities, Varaprabhu, that would be a much better society than we have today. And having a monastic lifestyle or monastic style of like an ecclesiastical group trying to run lives of grihasthas who live independently, it's definitely not the way I see things should be either. But now you take it a little bit further than I think, and you think that if we had a different style of management, then we could institute. Now, is that Varnashram system or just farming communities? You see, when I'm talking about Varnashram system, Prabhu, I'm talking on the macro level, and you're talking about community on the micro level. I agree with both. I am of opinion that on a macro level, on a universal level or world platform level, which is generally how it was done in the olden days, referring to the verse we were discussing, and Krishna encouraged Yudhishthira Maharaj to make sure that Varnashram is followed from that angle. Now there's total disintegration of all Varnashrama principles. We all of mixed Varna. Brahmanas are having to work in factories and offices, and Kshatriyas are having to do, business work. So yeah, we have a mixed Varna system. So how do you segregate, or how do you integrate, or how do you create a system where everyone is engaged properly in a small community that will influence. So yes, on a community level, I agree with you. That would be a much better ISKCON. We'd have a much better ISKCON. But on a world level, how do we institute Varnashram?
So if I can answer that, if you can answer
Yes,
that,
please do.
we have to,
Please do.
we have to, I mean, we start from a tree grows, first from the stem, it goes little and it goes to a big tree. I mean, why do we want to jump to the macro level? First is that we have to have communities that become model in any society, in any part of the world. If our societies are giving protection to to to, to human beings and the animals, and everyone feels safe living according to Krishna conscious principles, and we don't depend on the government to make anything happen. Then those type of communities will become model for government to build around. That is
Correct.
that's how the Muslims form their communities, and then they take over. Right now here in Lome, there is a place
Srila
in
Prabhupada
between.
did
It's
start
between.
that, Prabhupada, no? Srila Prabhupada did start the farming communities in
Yeah,
Pennsylvania, in
right.
Atlanta, in West Virginia, even I think
That
in Africa somewhere. And he wanted
Prabhupada
also,
Prabhupada is no longer there to see it through, and the disciples are no longer sharing the same vision because they are, being guided by different type of opinions. Usually it's always difficult to develop an idea that does not come from you, but because it's not your own vision. So if an idea doesn't come from you, it's difficult to develop it. But this is Prabhupada's vision, and we have to have people who share that same vision passionately to make it happen, starting from each community of devotees, to make it happen. But right now, the institutional
are,
system and they're
are
enjoying
you
it too.
saying that are you saying that we're very much at internal conflict with ourselves, right? Because if
Sure,
we just follow the principles of simple living, high thinking, we would be based more on community. But
sure,
our people are
sure.
ready for this kind of life also? I
We
mean,
make
if we
them.
say,
You, it depends on the leadership. It's from, like you said, from top down. This depends on the leadership, but the leadership are not the type, because you cannot take this renounced life and then you want to run community in a way that everyone will appreciate. No way, because your own lifestyle does not even depict the community. You are supposed to be an ascetic. So, and your lifestyle and your way of thinking is ascetic way. You understand? So these are the people
yeah,
running our society. So why
I
why would
agree with you.
Vanashram manifest? Vanashram
I
cannot
agree with you.
manifest under that.
I think sometimes when I mean, I'm happy to stand corrected by you, and I humbly present that, yeah, you have a very good vision. And I think if we had that, it would make a much better Krishna consciousness movement. It would, because I think you're right, very much so. But I was only talking about what Lord Krishna, how he instituted Varnashram through making sure. But at our level, where everything is broken down, there's no centralized management which has a Krishna conscious level, then obviously instituting Varna or instituting community living. I would not even use the word Varnashram, Prabhu. Because Varnashram would mean that laws of Manu, Varnashram, I mean, people will like, I mean, okay, as an experiment, let us see how long the Islamic community will last. We won't be here to see it, neither me nor you. But let us see if it is going to work, because it is not based on true Varnashram principle. It is based on following one order and one order only based on fear. And if people had more choices, would they be able to control the community? And controlling the community like that based on fear, which is not an essential principle of Krishna consciousness, are they likely to succeed? I think not. I think
Our
people
system,
are way more
so,
swayed by
sorry,
love than by fear.
exactly, that's just what I wanted to say. That's
Yeah,
exactly what I wanted to say. What your last statement is what I wanted to say. You pick it out from my mouth. Our
Yeah.
system is based on love. It's not based on force.
yeah,
And
it's not based
we
on force.
we are following so many principles and rules out of love, out of our own love. We were not forced to do it. So it can
No, we're
come
not.
about It can come about when you have leaders who can inspire more of such loving abandon, to devotion and to principles. And it can happen because somebody made us to do it. Prabhupada made us to do it. And his disciples whom we met made us to do it. Why we think that we cannot make others to do it? Why we think that it's going to change at our own time? We are not representing
Good
Prabhupada
point.
that way. Yeah, we are not.
Good point. But even now, even with all what is going on, I mean, like I often say, in places I live, is we have a ragtag band of brothers and band of sisters doing devotional service together, but we're hardly a community. We're hardly a community. Like if someone gets really, I mean, if someone has some influence and if he needs help, he may get some help. But the average devotee or the average person, he may be suffering in his corner. He may have so many issues, but we're not there to help him. We're just a ragtag band of brothers together in the Sampradaya, and we have our own issues. Yeah, we're not a community yet, even. Because, like you said, yeah, it requires leadership. It always comes from top bottom. But if we had, I agree with you 100% on that, that if we decentralize the way we are thinking and have every community develop in its own organic way with loving relationship and leaders who care for the community and do not always fly all over the place, but concentrate on some areas and develop it nicely. Like you said, examples of the Amish, they're doing good. I'm not so sure about the Islamic communities doing anything like that, because there's so much force, law, and schizophrenia. So I would not take that as an example. I humbly agree to disagree with you on that. They're not going to amount to very much. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Varaha. Always a pleasure.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, wonderful devotees. Yeah, this Varnashram, like Srimad Prabhu said, we probably need to find a specific time for such a wonderful discussion that cannot be discussed during Srimad Bhagavatam classes like this. But my little understanding about the Varnashram system, when Srila Prabhupada said that 50% of his mission has been accomplished, the other 50% has to be done by his disciples. I believe he did not refer to just his immediate disciples.
His followers.
His followers in general, yes. So it may not be taking place in this present generation or the next, but eventually it will take place. And as we speak now, there are few places on earth. It is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam that in Kali Yuga, monarchy will die out and it will become democracy. So there are many places where Srila Prabhupada said democracy means demons gone crazy, but there are many other places where Srila Prabhupada also glorified and praised democracy. So it's not just one-sided. But if devotees, the more the world become Hare Krishna devotees and understand these concepts, then it is much easier for the leader to help make this Varnashram system work. As we speak now, like I was saying, there are I don't remember the number, but there are more than 54 countries in the world that have a government based on monarchy. And Vatican, for example, is a very small community, but it's considered a country, it's considered a nation. They have their own flag, they have their own currency, they have their own way of living. So with time and influence, this Varnashram system, since it is Srila Prabhupada's vision, it's going to happen. It may not happen in our lifetime, it may not happen in the next third, fourth, fifth generations, but eventually it's going to happen. Arichakra Prabhu, please, you may unmute.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu, for the elaborate discussion, the answers you've been given. Like by listening to both sides, your Prabhu and Varaha's viewpoints, I'm not seeing any difference in what the two of you are saying, because basically speaking, even Prabhupada to spread Krishna consciousness, it did not just bounce up, boom. He went to a small place in New York and he started gradually, and gradually it expanded. And now it has become so a worldwide movement. So what I'm thinking is the idea that Prabhupada was trying to instill in us is to start from a community level where people can come and see the loving relationship between us. And that way, gradually, it will become like a model. And once the model, let's take for instance, like Poroya. Poroya is a small village, and we have Gita Nagri farm in Poroya. So if gradually we are able to establish Gita Nagri, we become very solidified and try to implement that community-based level of Krishna consciousness, like this Varnashrama thing. Gradually, by the time we realize the whole town of Poroya will be engulfed. And by the time we realize if Poroya gets engulfed, Mifflin town will gradually get engulfed. And there will come a time that even during election, it will be our own devotees, people who are Krishna conscious, who will be elected as what do we call it? Representatives of that
I agree
area.
with you, but I agree with your point, but I have a small query in my mind. It is like, what do we promote? We promote subsistence, material sort of independence, or we promote pure devotional service, or both? On what do we base ourselves? Prabhupada written books are meant for Bhakti Shastras, even Srimad Bhagavatam means glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's so many instructions about Varnashram, so many instructions about saintly kings. So my question in my mind is, how do we go about? Do we push and promote practice of Uttama Bhakti, pure devotional service? Or do we forego all of that and we try to create community based on what? What will be the binding force of the community?
Oh, okay.
What will be the binding force of the community?
I think I get the point what you are saying. But like I was saying, during the time of Bhattacharya Maharaj in Gita Nagri, it was so surprising that anybody, whether it's a devotee coming from another place or it's what do you call it, an outsider, someone who doesn't call himself a, once they come to the environment, immediately they feel the devotional vibration, the devotional love. And so people even named Gita Nagri that time as the what do we call it, the hospital of the heart. So the point is, we should emphasize on bhakti, because we cannot try to establish Varnashram and put bhakti aside. Once we do that, it will become like what do we call it, an artificial way of trying to institute something, and that would be extremely difficult, almost impossible.
Okay.
But
So
once the bhakti is there,
okay, the reason, so we don't go too long, I get the gist of it.
okay.
The reason I ask this question, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about Devi Varnashram. So when he talks about Devi Varnashram, what is a guiding principle? Is it the organizational structure based on Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra? Or wherever status we are, Sanustita Pumsam Vishaksena Kathasuyanut, or he says, whatever status of life we are, we're trying to please Vishnu. Which one would be the written mission statement of a community, therefore? We're trying to live independently, create a community, or we're trying to serve Vishnu? You see what I'm saying? So which one we promote more, or which becomes a central mission statement of a community? Service to Lord Vishnu or material self-sufficiency? Which one?
Both. Because
I purposefully asked that question because I knew you were going to say both, because that's what we really need. Both. That means Devi Varnashram. You see, when it is both, it is Devi Varnashram. Why? Because if it is just for economic development, then it is Asuri Varnashram, and everyone will be greedy and wanting to get and exploit everyone. So therefore, unless it is guided by, spiritually potent person, unless it is guided by Srila Prabhupada, his ideals embodied in his rulers, in his successors, then we will have a hard time implementing it. Because those who hold the scepter or the power, they have to be willing to do that and develop communities rather than have centralized system of management where it's like, I have one very practical example that we lived through. It was in the late 80s. You see, I was living in UK at that time, and the devotees wanted to have different temples, but it was all very centralized, and every single unit was trying to feed the one main unit. Yeah, and it is kind of the same thing also in several areas now. So different units working to serve the purpose of one unit. Therefore, this is generally done at the detriment of the grassroots level community members, right? And this is a centralized system. And why do you have a centralized system? Is it good or is it bad? You see, in the model that I explained about Yudhishthir Maharaj, it is both the centralized system of a spiritual hierarchy, but it's a decentralized system of communities which is run by village head. And I was giving these names specifically. Like I said, one person in charge of a village is called a sarpanch. And when somebody is in charge of 10 villages, and he's coordinating the activities of 10 villages, called a nayak. And when he has 1,000 villages, then he becomes like a king. But you see, in Africa, you have that system. You do have that system already, right? The Ashanti tribes are being run on that system.
The Ashanti kingdom. Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, the Ashanti kingdom is they have a king, so they have so many villagers in charge of that system. Now, this system is a Vedic system. It is a Vedic system, but its success is dependent on the Brahmanas. Because the Brahmanas will actually hold the king to account. But if the Brahmanas are becoming Kshatriyas, then you have a corrupt system. Because either the Brahmanas, live simply, jajan, jajan, patan, patan, dana, pratigraha. That means that they are reading, studying, they're understanding, right? And also they are observing and they're giving directives to the rulers or to the community leaders or whoever it is, the village head. They're actually giving this. And if they do receive more than they need, then they actually, pratigraha means they do accept for the subsistence, but also the principle is the giveaway. Now, if they're ruling by these principles, then you will have a very wholesome community. But if you're not ruling by these rules, then how do you create a community? Because everyone has a tendency to exploit, right? Everyone has a tendency to become Purusha. This Purusha Abhiman is there. So there's a lot of complex issues there. My contention is, I think we're not even okay, I would say that Varaha would probably get angry with me, but he's rightly to be angry with me also if he is, because we said it has to start somewhere. I said we're not ready, and he will say we have to start somewhere. And I agree with him, we have to start somewhere. But generally what we do, and me also, I'm guilty of that, and I admit, is because we said Prabhupada, and this is being used Varaha Prabhu, don't think that I'm not aware that because Prabhupada started, like I myself quoting, like they have in Pennsylvania, but it didn't work out so well. So therefore, maybe we should just carry on with the preaching and with the system that is working for now. So these things, yeah, these kind of feelings are out there. So, but it's good. This discussion is very healthy. I like it. And yeah, it's in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we are talking Srimad Bhagavatam. We're not talking to create enmities. We are talking to distill these ideas, to understand, have better understanding, and appreciate everyone's viewpoint, and still be friends and brothers.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And if the devotees are going to agree with me, maybe we try to wrap it up for the day.
Shalika wants to say something. Let's hear him for last minute.
Shalika Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, ADVAITA-KRISHNA Prabhu. And I think I agree with you, the idea that we should wrap it up. I think largely part of what I wanted to say, ADVAITA-KRISHNA has said it in the last few comments he made to response to Harichakra Prabhu, that the fact is that Prabhupada's opinion and what ADVAITA-KRISHNA Prabhu is positing is not necessarily like a conflicting statement. It's just that what Prabhu is saying is possible. We all agree this is possible. Because it is being said by a pure devotee, it will come to pass. Yes, we agree it will come to pass. But then ADVAITA-KRISHNA Prabhu is saying that what it takes to make it happen is not there. And that is what we're pointing out, that the qualification that is required to put this in place is not as it is today. It's not there, even within our system of ISKCON. And like a general saying, charity begins at home. Prabhupada was able to establish Krishna consciousness because he's a Krishna conscious person. Prabhupada carries Krishna consciousness in him, and he was able to transmit it. So when we talk about Varnashram Dharma, no one is saying that it is not possible. Neither is he saying we're saying that Prabhupada's statement will have to go false, or his statement is false, or it will not come to pass. It will come to pass based on, because a pure devotee has said it. But as it is today, the qualification required is not there, which is the Brahmanic qualification. And like Prabhu said, so that's what I was going to say. And I think ADVAITA-KRISHNA Prabhu said most of that towards the end of his. So there is no disagreement in a sense. It's just about complementing and understanding.
I think we are looking at the elephant from different angle. Braha is possibly he's holding the what do you call this, the elephant, what do you call that, the long thing?
I think
right. Then I'm holding some other part of it, and we're trying to.
I think that the starting point is devotees admitting that this is a responsibility Srila Prabhupada has given us to accomplish. And we try our humblest but seriously best way to make it happen. And to me, affirming what Srimad Prabhu was saying, the first step is to have all these sannyasis and gurus who are in the position of administration drop it. Because you do not expect a sannyasi, you do not expect a guru to live a Kshatriya spirit. It's contraindicated. And to govern means that you should have the Kshatriya spirit. So that should be the beginning point. And then, because we have this common adage, when a fish starts rotting, it begins from the head. So if we're going to go any further, it begins with the leadership. Here is the case that when devotees even try to come together to discuss, just like we're discussing, what we need to do, what can we do to make things better. Some people in the position of leadership feel insulted and they do not want to have any engagement with anybody. So it's more or less like autocratic thing we are doing until somebody rises up and try to use Kshatriya spirit in a divine way to make things happen the way they are supposed to happen. All this dalliance, but like our speaker for yesterday was speaking, Nite Kishore Devi, she said she has a mood. And you do not expect her to come and say, that is not a mood. We had Brahma Tirtha speak to us some time ago also, and he said, we all have different natures. Somebody like maybe ADVAITA-KRISHNA Prabhu, if somebody came to his house to steal, he is going to sit this thief down and preach to him. If a thief came to my house and then I got him, I'm going to cut one of his ears off, So different people reacting to different things, same thing differently. So, but I think strongly that the beginning point is we do not have sannyasis in managerial position. Krishna never did that. So why would we do that? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
ADVAITA-KRISHNA Prabhu, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to become
Hare Krishna, thank you. My pleasure always.
Drivers. We became the backseat drivers. You are the main driver today, but thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Can I react to Salita Prabhu?
Yes, please go ahead.
Please.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so first thing is that, like, if you are not a farmer and you are sent to a field to go and cultivate, you would definitely say, I don't see any grains here. I don't see anything growing here. Right? Prabhupada, before Prabhupada went to the West, could we say that there is this possibility of having Vaishnavas around the world? Like you're saying today that we don't have, the class of people to do this. We don't see them, the Brahmanas, whatever. Before Prabhupada came to the West, were there people at all who are Vaishnavas, who are Brahmins or doing anything Brahminical? I mean, do we have them on the scale we have today? So to say that we don't have it, I mean, that's like going to an extreme of not wanting to see how much success Prabhupada has achieved already. And second point, or just 2 points. One is, I would also like to know, do you think Prabhupada established, or Prabhupada wanted Islam to be a centralized system, to be ruled by a centralized? There are many statements,
No, never wanted centralized system. Never wanted a centralized system.
Exactly.
He was against
Yeah, it is the
never wanted a centralized system.
It is the centralized system that is retarding the progress of, not only achieving whatever Prabhupada wanted as a vision, but even the growth of Islam. That is the centralized system. And then maybe the last point.
You see, Varaha, the centralized system I spoke about was spiritual centralization system. Spiritual centralization, because spiritual principles come typically down from Krishna, right? Hare Krishna. Right. So spiritual systems come typically down from Krishna. So yes, what is that? Okay, we don't need that right now, so it doesn't matter. So centralized system means that Yudhishthira Maharaj had more power, has more authority because of his high spiritual status. He was Dharmaraj. So therefore, you have, that's a parampara system anyway, Rajrishi Sampradaya or our Guru Sampradaya. So that has to be one. That cannot be two. The way you lead a community, if you have a community in Africa, or the way, Sahadev leads a community, if he has a community in America, has to be the same. So the spiritual principles have to be the same. Practical application, depending on manpower, resources, and everything, has to be locally adjusted. That's normal.
Okay, Prabhu, thank you. So my last point is, for instance, communism. Communism, they were thinking that they are the best solution to solve human problems, or societal problems, right? But then gradually they started they have to contend with human nature. People wanted profit. People wanted to be free to express their qualities. That is not taken care of in communism. So gradually communism has fallen apart. Now, same thing is in ISKCON, until we understand the beauty and the success that has to come to establishing financial community, we will regret that we never put it in place for so long, because they did not see the kind of success that will come with that. They did not see that. They cannot see that. That there will be such an explosion when people begin to see that they can practice Krishna consciousness and at the same time use their God-given talents and without being restricted, without having to conform and become like uniform people, like zombies, that kind of a thing. So this is what is, we people really don't understand what Prabhupada gave. Excuse me to say, I'm not saying I know better than everyone, but whatever that has inspired some of us to have faith that Krishna consciousness can work, and despite whatever that we've seen, we are still glued to it. It's much more than people can think. Many people they're going easy because it serves them well, just doing the sacrifice, hypocrisy, but they did not think about changing society. They're not. It's not their worries to see how to transform society. It's not their worries as long as they can enjoy and then benefit from ISKCON society. So we have to be part of that creation. Prabhupada has created something, set something rolling, and we have to make it work. We have to contribute to making it, realizable. Excuse me to say. So anyway, so that's my last point. Last point is that our leaders, or those who are against or are not seeing Vanashram in the near future, is because they just don't even know. They don't even know what benefits and how much it can help, the success of ISKCON. They cannot dream of it, but time will come that they will begin to understand that. This enclosure and this uniformity, conformity, straight-jacketed kind of practicing Krishna consciousness cannot help it to grow, even within the reality of the modern day we are today. And Vanashram is the alternative.
It's like,
people,
yeah, it's like, yeah, I agree to a large extent what you're saying. But when I look through, you see, I give more credibility to what Srila Prabhupada wrote in his books than what Prabhupada said in context or in talks that he may have had. But when you see what Srila Prabhupada has written, mostly in Srimad Bhagavatam, or Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, or Chaitanya Charitamrita, or those things, Prabhupada gave sort of 90% emphasis on trying to develop pure devotional service wherever we are. That's generally my tendency to look at it like that. That may be unfortunate, or maybe I am properly instructed by Srila Prabhupada. I don't know. I may be in my own Maya and think like that. I agree. I can stand corrected. But whenever these discussions happen, Varaha and you, my brother, you, my friend, I tend to always go into, I've been studying for a long time. I'm not saying I'm a good student. And I find it very hard to reconcile. So then I'll go back to reconcile to what you're saying. So therefore I go back to thinking that if there is a critical mass, I tend to think like that. And given my spiritual master also told me the same thing. When you have a critical mass, and then we can start to say, okay, these are the better systems, and people, we may listen. And we may have set examples, like you said, community examples, but also may have an influence on society at large. But if you really look at whatever is written in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and so on and so forth, it's very hard to kind of go that way. And like I give you one example, like when you see Dhruva Maharaj and you see Bharat Maharaj, and they go out in the forest and they're trying to be tyagis, they're trying to be vanaprashtis. And they tend to follow a certain guide, a certain rule of Ashtanga Yoga to control their mind. Now, we don't have that kind of system except chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra right now. And as I see the quality of the people we have right now, will they fall into that kind of order, which is an order based on productivity, based on engagement, rather than based on power, rasa? I'm kind of, that's why I hold that view. Maybe one day I will change, I don't know. But I hold that view because everyone is pursuing some kind of a taste in Krishna consciousness. And this is what is guiding us. The nectar of the holy name, the study of Srimad Bhagavatam, associating with wonderful devotees like your all good selves here. And this is what drives our Krishna consciousness. And therefore, are we at the point then we will say, okay, let's forget about all of that and try to make a system for our livelihood based on some principles of Devi Varnashram. Whereas people are working where they are at. Just today, I had an example that was completely hit me. I was dropping a boy at the airport, and there was another boy who was coming back with me. And I asked him, and I said, "What do you have in India?" He's an Indian boy. He said, "We have 70 acres of land, we have 7 cows, and we have 3 tractors." And I said, "What are you doing here, trying to work in this place?" He said, "Because that was a fitur, that is like a desire." And I said, "What did your father say?" My father said, "Here you're employing people. Here you're employing people. You have 75 acres of land. You have cows, you have 3 tractors. You grow sugarcane, you grow rice, and you grow wheat." And I said, "What is your income?" And he said, 1.8 million rupees a year, the family. And I said, "You're living very well." He said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, what are you doing here, trying to go and find a job in a petrol station?" So you think about the quality of the people we have. And now he said, "Now I have seen it. I really want to go to my farm." So all these issues are also there in the people's mind because we have to start maybe, having Varnashram colleges, which is basically Krishna conscious colleges. And maybe students will grow up thinking different way. But right now, the general mass of people are thinking iPod, I don't know what you call it, iPhone, iPod, I this, I that. So maybe we have a different breed of people in front of us right now. And unless we want to become like the Amish and start a community, and hopefully this will influence the rest of society. But if you see that, and if you take the example of the Amish has been at it for 200 years, going on and on with 10, 12, 15 communities, but it didn't seem that it influenced the neighborhood any more than it influenced us or anyone else. So that's also a thing. So change of consciousness, will it be brought about this reorganization of society or the proliferation of Srimad Bhagavatam? Yeah, tat yattag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin, you know what that verse. That this is when Lord Vyasadeva said to Nagmuni said to Vyasadeva, he said, "My dear Prabhu, this is a different creation. What are you doing?" He said, "Why are you explaining the Srimad Bhagavatam in the same line like you're expressing the Vedas, which promotes Purushartha? This is a different creation. This is a creation where you glorify Krishna repeatedly over and over again, over and over again, over and over again, and you directly and repeatedly glorify Krishna." So if you take that as a basic instruction of Narad Muni to institute this Bhagavad Dharma, and he says, why are you doing it in a way that promotes Purushartha, which means what people are generally interested in? So it gives another dichotomy. It gives another way of looking at things. I think we will end here. I don't want to have the last word if anyone wants to say, but this is also something that is always occupying my mind. That do we just spread the words of Srimad Bhagavatam and every word is said that for an honest man with honest views, it will bring about a change in consciousness, a revolution in society. So, and Prabhupada's preaching is the essence. So what do we do? Which part of the elephant we hold to try to describe it? Thank you, Varaha Prabhu. Grantaraja Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shishinita Gaur Preman, Hari Hari.
Jai. Hare Krishna. You are the speaker, so you get to give us the last words. So you beautifully did that. And on that basis, we're going to humbly request all the devotees to kindly unmute And we all chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation to our revered speaker, His Grace Advaita Krishna Prabhu. Jai.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Panchakalpatarubhyo Kripa
Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo
Namaha. His Grace Advaita Krishna Prabhu ki Jai. Vaishnava Thakur ki Jai. His confounder Acharya Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. Sri Gaura Bhakta Vrinde ki Jai.